You've been performing so long. It's hard to tell the difference between who you are and what you do. And the thought of pausing, even for a moment, feels dangerous. Because what happens if you stop? And they keep talking. Hi, I'm Dr. Phyllis, your coach, and welcome to Own Your Yes. In today's episode, we continue and conclude with the series Unseen, Unspoken, Unwell, the real cost of constant motion. And it's episode 89. Back in 2019, life hit a crossroads for me. Yet, honestly, I was ignoring the signals that I feel that God was sending me that something needed to change. Then in 2020, I was in a departmental leadership, chief of a department, and I was completing a 6-year, which really was preceded by 2 years of what I call an initiation period, a pledge period, a trial period to between myself and another person to get this promotion. And it was a lot. It was a lot that came along with that leadership position all the way around. I learned a lot and endured a lot. It is often the case for a leadership position. And in the midst of working in healthcare, 2020, dealing with COVID and how that impacted myself as a leader and overnight everybody else, wow, it was a lot. And again, starting in 2019, spilling over really 2020 for us in the West Coast, it really hit. And when I was finishing my term as chief, still would be working as a frontline physician and in a different type of team-based leadership role. Yet I was filled with apprehension, a feeling of being lost, so many emotions because I no longer was going to be in the room of those administrative meetings. And honestly, I was worried because I was worried about what people would say because I wasn't going on for a second term in that position and honestly so much of who I was because I had been through a season of just having to react and respond and try to juggle and work and home and everything that life, as you hear me say, it become a treadmill. And I just was on autopilot. So much so that I immediately thought, hey, I'm not leaving. I am going to continue in some form of leadership position because, again, all I knew for all that time was being at that table, being in those administrative meetings. And then again, I was suddenly worried about, well, what would people be talking about? What would they say about me not continuing on and in that leadership position? And so what did I do? I jumped in and applied for another leadership position. And initially was all excited about it, did all the research, and I didn't get that position. And I had to realize at that point in time that the value that I had put on myself, the value that I had put on my enoughness, my success, my value, my productivity, my achievement had become blurred and tied into the position. I had so long worked for the acceptance and the people pleasing of those above me, trying to get that validation that I was doing a good job, that I had, met their expectation and that I fit in and I was accepted in the room and at the table. And again, as I said, I just became overcome like, well, what are they going to say? What are they going to say about me if I'm not in the room? Probably honestly, because I had heard what had been said about other people. And I didn't want someone else telling my story. So I'm like, well, I'm going to be in the room. So when I did not get that next position, initially I was just overwhelmed and had to realize that God was saying, Phyllis, I had you complete that other job. And I'm going to admit it, sis. I was like, if I could have pushed to be in that leadership position longer, I would have, even though I know I was dying emotionally and physically and spiritually on the vine. I was exhausted trying to keep, as they say, juggling all the balls in the air. But yet I was determined. I had to keep going. I had to keep doing that. But again, I didn't take God's signal when that position ended. What do? I assumed that when God was starting to try to whisper to me that something else was out there, well, I'm going to create that answer and apply for this other job. And it could have gone either way. I could have gotten it. But God knew best. It didn't feel that way. I'm going to tell you, when I did not get that other job where I felt like, well, I'm going to be in the room. If I get this other job, I'm going to be there. But it was God saying, you're missing the point, Phyllis. You're missing the point. I gave you that other position because you asked for that position. I gave it to you so you can learn those lessons, but now it's time to move on. No, Phyllis, you decided to go for this next position. You decided to go and create your answer instead of coming to me and asking for the answer. So he had to get my attention at another level to say, okay, so now maybe if they tell you no about this position, you'll sit down. And since, yes, he did get my attention. And I had to realize that while I didn't see it at the beginning, I thought the lesson was just a repositioning, that I was moving from one position to another. But it turned out that God was telling me I needed to pause. And God had to shut down more than one door before I listened. And that's where I want to talk to you the topic about the pressure to perform and the fear to pause. Fear of what others will think keeps many women like me, like you, in motion. But constant motion doesn't protect your peace. It doesn't protect your peace. It postpones. Now, I want you to listen to me now. It postpones your healing. Now, let me say that again. Constant motion doesn't protect your peace. It postpones your healing. You cannot outrun what God's trying to reveal. And often, sis, just like with me at that time, you're trying to outrun what God is trying to reveal to you by staying in constant motion, that fear of stopping. To the point that when you don't do it on your own, God will do it. Be it the job, be it something in your family, be it in your own personal health, He will do it. He's not punishing us. He's trying to get our attention. He's trying to get your attention. Think about it. You notice I got quiet and you're probably like, Dr. Phyllis, what's going on? How did you feel when I got quiet? Sometimes you can feel uncomfortable just in the quiet. I've gotten to a point I love the quiet, but there was a time that pausing made me feel uncomfortable. There was a fear of that missing out or the fear of pausing. So, sis, let's talk about why the fear of falling behind or falling apart, of pausing, keeps us stuck in performance overdrive or performance mode. And how to start loosening this mindset's grip on your life. How do you start loosening its grip on your life, on your mind, on your spirit, on your physical health? There's a 3-part mindset approach framework that I want you to think about. And they're based on 3 fear-fueled beliefs that keep high-achieving women like you stuck in this mode of performance because that pressure to perform and the fear to pause. The first is, if I pause, I'll fall behind. If I pause, I'll fall behind. I won't keep up. I will miss out. But the truth is, sis, rest is not a detour. It's a recalibration. Let me say that again. Rest is not a detour. It's not a detour off where God is taking you. It's a recalibration. It's a time to recalibrate. Slowing down doesn't mean failure. It's how you return to clarity. The second one is if I stop, they'll talk. Somebody's going to talk about the fact that you stopped, that you took a pause. And as for women, we have this fear that if we take off for our kids, if we take off to care for family, or if we take off for our own mental health, that somebody's going to talk. Somebody's going to talk. Because to be honest with you, when I completed that first 6-year term, and you might as well, as I said, 8 years, because I had to compete for the position for 2 years leading up to it, and probably had some leftover disappointment that I even had to do that for the number of years I had worked in the department and I felt had invested and sacrificed. I had finished one term. I'm going to be honest. And I wanted to push forward for another 6 years. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. But God had to tell me, no, you don't need to do that. So I figured, okay, well, if you don't want me to do that, I'm going to do this, as I talked about earlier. And I could imagine God shaking his head saying, no, that's not what I meant. I meant for you to take a breather. But yet I did not want to get off of or out of that cycle or out of that mode, that fear of missing out or being talked about, because maybe they think I feel that I'm not good enough or up to the task to do another 6 years. Or I was in that mode of, well, I'm going to continue to do this, and because it was a safe place. Just stick to what I know versus trying something else out. So all of those narratives that can go through your mind of what people are going to say if you stop. And often, sometimes it's the thoughts that go on in your own mind if you stop doing something. That, if you stop doing something, you're giving up or you're not being resilient, all of that stuff. But the truth is, yeah, people may talk. And yes, Satan may get busy and start talking to you, trying to make you feel a certain way about stopping. But their version, the other people's version, or Satan's version of your story does not have to become your truth. What God is doing in you is louder than their whispers. Let me say that one again. What God is doing in you by telling you, and for like some of us, showing you it's time to pause, is louder and has more importance and has more strength than the whispers of the peanut gallery or what Satan's trying to whisper in your ear. Lastly, if I'm not doing, I'm not valuable. How many times have you heard that thought in your mind, or you've had that belief that if you're not doing, you're not valuable? I think it's ingrained in many of us high achieving women. The truth is, sis, your identity was never meant to be tied to the output, what you do. God called you into being, to living, not just about what the doing is. You are a human being, not a human doing. You are a human being, experiencing life, growing, maturing, creative, loving, caring being, not a human doing. This week, sis, I want you to name one fear that's been keeping you in constant motion, afraid to get off. If you see your life as a hamster wheel, what is that one fear that's been keeping you on the hamster wheel? If it's like I describe a treadmill where you're just running, or speed walking, and you're just going through and you feel like you're not getting anywhere, but you're just doing. What's the one fear that you have of getting off of that treadmill? If it is, you feel like you're just running a marathon, you're just in perpetual running mode, or you feel like your brain is so overloaded and that you feel like you just have too much on your plate. What is the one fear that you have about trying to take something off of your plate? I want you to identify one fear, something that's been you've been doing out of an anxiety, not aligned with who you truly are at your core or who you aspire to reconnect on who you are. What is the one fear that's just been keeping you in motion? So much so that you're afraid to make a change. I want you to write it down. One thing, one fear. Fear of missing out, fear that you won't have value if you stop doing it, fear that you are admitting or you are saying you are not resilient, fear of not making others happy or making them upset if you stop, fear that if you stop, then you're opening the door to a whole bunch of emotions that you're just don't know if you want to go there. Write down the fear, call it out. Call it out. Because often when they used to talk about the elephant in the room, right? The thought that just, the thought that hangs, the thought or something that's happened that just hangs heavy in the air, just suffocating you because you know it's there, but you're trying to avoid it. And then it becomes a takeover your life, that fear. Point it out, call it out. Because I can tell you, often when you call it out, there's a feeling of relief. So that's your homework this week. Call that fear out, write it down. Because I want you to be able to release that pressure so you can overcome the fear to pause. If today's episode has been helpful to you, please share it. Share it. Subscribe to the show. Reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm here on YouTube. I would love for you, if you're listening to me on one of the platforms such as Apple or Google Play or Spotify, leave me a review. I'm on IG, I'm Facebook. Reach out to me and let me know how are you doing and how you are impacted by our Own Your Yes podcast. I love you. Do your homework, and I'll see you here next week. And thank you for joining me for this 4-part series, Unseen, Unspoken, Unwell, the real cost of constant motion. Love you. Talk to you soon. Bye now.